am going to go ahead and invite our first speaker of the day without any further ado, the best person in the room to tell us more about all of this. Please put your hands together and welcome Managing Director, India South Asia, IBM, Sandip Patel. Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I also want to thank you because I always feel very proud to be a trusted technology partner for many of you in this audience. So again, thank you for your trust and confidence in us. And thank you, Leslie, for setting the context. So look, I'm going to try and make this somewhat practical and share with you more of results of how we've been putting artificial intelligence for business in practice. Today, in many respects, I feel that AI or artificial intelligence is at an inflection point. It has transitioned from assisting businesses to becoming a very foundational technology. And we call it the AI first world. And in this AI first world, the first thing that we've thought would be good to do is to test the adoption of AI around the world. And I'm going to share with you some of the findings from that. It's something that we refer to as the AI adoption report. And it shows, what is very interesting is if you look across all the countries, it shows that India and Indian enterprises, they've clearly outshined their global counterparts, particularly in both exploration of AI, but also deployment of AI. And it's about 59% of IT professionals at large organizations, they report that they have actively deployed AI. Similarly, I think if we look at some of the other statistics, what we find is that about 6 out of 10 IT professionals, they report that their companies are actively deploying and implementing generative AI solutions, and about 34% others are exploring it in some way, shape, or form. So in many respects, I think many of you in this room are probably a part of that percentage, and in terms of what you're doing or trying to do with AI. What is also interesting is there's another little factoid that 54% of the pilots and POCs, they actually make it to production. And so the question that we ask ourselves is, why aren't AI POCs, experiments, why aren't they scaling? And I'm going to share with you at least some learnings that we've had across implementations and also scaled projects that we have around the world. And while this is a good indicator, I think what we really have to look for is how do we take this technology, make it relevant for business, but more importantly, how do we scale it into production where we can actually get the benefits at scale. So when we looked, we've done about 700 plus pilots, production projects and others globally. Over the last, I would say across the last 9 to 10 months, there's been about 700 plus pilots that we've run globally. And when we look at use cases that are becoming relevant in this space, not surprisingly enough, customer service and IT processes, those are consistently always there. But also what we are finding is that areas which either have a large labor and cost concentration, those that involve large document handling, those which are actually seeing process delays where you can drive automation, or have gaps in risk management that can be automated as well. Those are areas which are, gaining a lot of acceptance. And I've just highlighted a few here. And by the way, a lot of this information will be available to you. But I think when we boil it all down, there are probably 4 key categories that are very relevant today. Customer experience, clearly that is sort of where the genesis of AI actually came from. Horizontal functions like HR, finance, supply chain. Interestingly enough, we tend to have IBM as a client zero for all the technologies that we have ourselves. And we have actually automated our entire HR function by AI enabling it with some amazing results. The third area is, IT processes, IT operations, etc. And then clearly core business operations. So these are domains which we are seeing as use cases that are being relevant, that where clients are actually seeing value in these, looking at an ROI, and then trying to get these more scaled up. Now, as we have gone through these, there are 5 fundamental principles that I think are becoming very relevant in terms of enterprise considerations on how to scale AI. So these are, I think, 5 truths that have started to surface, which are very real. And then there's a sixth overarching one, which I'll talk about in just a second. But first, AI will be multimodal, and it needs to be hybrid by design. You will have different jurisdictions in terms of data privacy, data residency, and all the rest of it. And I think as we designed our watsonx AI platform, we actually had that as a fundamental design principle that we would need for it to be hybrid by design. It can operate within your firewalls, on private clouds in your firewall, on premise. It could be hosted elsewhere on the public cloud as well. However, the important thing here is that one model will not rule it all. In fact, 60% plus of enterprises, they are already leveraging a combination of models. For example, there's the IBM Granite. Enterprises have their own proprietary models, and they're also using open source models like Llama, Mixtral, etc. The rationale is very simple. It's cost, security, privacy, having a flexibility, and driving innovation. And at times, it's all about regulatory concerns, right? So that's what defines it to be hybrid by design. Second, it's really important that enterprises are thinking about this through use cases. Technology for the heck of technology is not going to go anywhere. And so selecting the right use cases, the right models underlying it, and how do you deploy it, right? That can actually make or break your ROI. And so it's really important to have that as a fundamental way and a principle, design principle, as you think about how you adopt and scale AI. Third, which is, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more as well, is AI, for it to work, must be built responsibly. And the background and the backbone of any technology, any new technology, is trust. Now, despite recent innovations, AI still faces tremendous hurdles. It can be biased. It can be error-prone. It might hallucinate. We ourselves have seen some examples of that in the country with a lot of excitement around it, right? The bottom line is you need AI that you can trust and where you can explain the outcomes. Really, really critical. Another reason why many pilots have not made it into production is due to data quality, access, and security. So that's the fourth point. In our pilots, we found that enterprises with high data wealth, they are gaining clearly an edge and delivering up to 2 times ROI on AI projects. And the last point I want to make on this is that while early in their journeys, enterprises are calling out for help now to tie in experimentation to business value. How do you bridge that to business value? And even as they are experimenting with multiple partners and so on and so forth, that bridge to business value becomes very important. And that's where picking the right use cases and others becomes important. Now, across all of this, I said there is a 6th element, and I know Leslie touched on this, is skilling. I am a firm believer that notwithstanding all of the AI technical skilling that obviously we will need to equip our workforce with, and I've always maintained that the demographic dividend that India has, if we skill that demographic dividend properly, we can truly become the skill capital of the world. But that said, in addition to that, I think it is incumbent on all of us to teach ourselves how do we work, how do we operate with this technology. That is going to become a fundamental need for people at all levels in the organization. Because if we don't learn to do that, right, we will not succeed with this technology outpacing all of us. So I wanted to leave you with these thoughts. These are some learnings that I think we've summarized from a lot of the pilots and others that we have done and the work that we are continuing to do with clients. Now, clearly, there are enterprise considerations that are going to be clearly important. I think Leslie touched on some of this. But as enterprises start to move into both exploring, adopting, and then scaling AI, a few things to keep in perspective. Clearly, it really is important to have a strategic vision. Why are you using GenAI? And I'll give you a little humorous example here. And this is a client of mine who is experimenting a lot with AI and others. And he told me a little story where he said, I walked out of one of the G20 summits which he was attending. This was last year. And he said, there was a lot of hype around AI. Everyone, and he's a global CIO of this enterprise. And he said, look, everyone's telling me, what are we doing with ChatGPT? What are we doing with this, that, the other? And he said, we were at an event with a lot of my business, my business clients in his organization. And he said a very senior academician actually stood up on stage and said, I've been using Metaverse for 20 years, and we should all be using it. And he said, and immediately a couple of people just reached out to him and says, why aren't we using Metaverse if he's been using it for 20 years? I mean, that in itself, he said, I had to just walk out of that room because it's not technology for the heck of technology or going with the next hype. It's about why are we wanting to use it and how can it really help our enterprise? Second, it's really important, how once you decide why you want to use AI, you have the strategy in place. It's thinking about, what models are you going to select? What is going to make most sense? What are the prioritized use cases? We also talked about data and its importance. And to be really impactful, you need to have AI that can integrate into existing workflows and systems, drive automation, and augmenting key processes. In many respects, we keep talking about artificial intelligence. I like to actually think about it as augmented intelligence, because in some respects, you are augmenting, what you do for doing things a lot better, right? Third is to really make it user-centric. It's really important that you drive experiences in a way that you understand the personas that are involved, and you design it in a way that as you infuse AI into workflows, and provide those experiences, they are easy to adopt and move forward with. The next one is obviously the operating model. And while scaling AI is important, it's really important to do that in a responsible manner. And this could mean, introducing new ways of working, you putting in place controls in terms of how it cannot be misused, policies, guidelines, frameworks, and all of the above. And lastly, I think in an AI-first world, it's going to really be important in terms of how you drive talent and culture and really having the right kind of AI skill sets, training, upskilling, not just for the people who are building these systems for you, but also the users of these applications. Really, really critical. And that's what I said. I think our chairman says it really, really well, that if we don't learn how to work with these systems, we are all going to become obsolete very, very quickly. And so, just as a quick snapshot, how are we sort of driving this at IBM? And, I just want to make the point that we have been investing in AI research for over 25 years now. There have been significant milestones, as, I'm going to point out on the slide, where we've actually gone through, this notion of machines that could think. That was sort of the initial Watson work that we did with Jeopardy and so on and so forth, right? And with sustained advancements in these technologies, right, we have truly tried to build a platform that brings together different components of what's important. So Watson.ai, which actually is a studio where you can actually build applications. WatsonX.data, which actually helps you organize the data that's required for these systems effectively. WhatsonX.governance, which is a unique capability, I think, that we have as a part of our platform that enables you to create governance models for AI systems, depending on different models that you're using, different use cases that you're using, and how do you make it real within the organization, and how do you keep it updated? And then clearly, Watson.orchestrate, which actually helps you drive orchestration across your different processes, and Watson Code Assistant that really helps you automate IT processes and so on and so forth. And this is where I think one other point I want to make is the reason why model selection is important is what Leslie said. There are actually smaller models that can actually do the work that you need it to do and deliver the right kind of results. So for example, we just announced the general availability of Mixtral 8x7b. It's a term that we use for this model on WatsonX, but it can cut latency by 75%. So smaller models are evolving now that will actually make it a lot more efficient for you to deploy these systems. And lastly, I think the thing that is really, really important is how we drive responsible AI. Through our 100+ year history, we have always put ethics at the forefront, and this is defined by our principles for trust and transparency that underpin the technology that we design and develop. That has been actually a fundamental part of the design for WatsonX, and it's the rich legacy that we choose to keep alive. And at IBM, therefore, we pledge the use of responsible AI today, tomorrow, and always. So with that, back to you.